Everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back with you, and today we are talking about the Cila Tribe, as they are one of the 3 tribes in Survivor 50. And so we've all gotten the chance, hopefully, to listen to Mike Bloom's incredible interviews from Fiji. And now we're going to put it all together and do a little bit of a tribe preview now that we know what everybody is thinking. And here's the man who got to go to Fiji and talk with everybody. Give it up for Mike Bloom.
Cila, we do want to be because we're talking about you today.
Yes. All right. Mike, I've had so much fun listening to your interviews. I've really just binged them all in a very short while before we recorded this podcast.
Oh, you mainlined a lot of Cila.
Yes. I ended up listening to 2 of them last night and then 6 this morning to get ready to do this podcast. So it's very fresh in my mind.
Thank you. Really thank everybody. Like I've said before, I was really eagerly anticipating these interviews to be released for a number of reasons. First, they're really fun. If it's not become abundantly clear a third of the way through, I had so much fun getting to be out there and talking with this cast. But we mentioned this on the kickoff, and I think I've seen this take away a bit from some particular people's interviews when it comes to especially these old school players. I think we all had these preconceived notions about the 50 cast. And look, again, there are, I think, misgivings, understandably, to have about who made it on, who didn't. But I think certainly some of the opinions about why is X back for the umpteenth time? They don't care about Survivor anymore. They're just going to do the same thing. We'll certainly talk about this with my conversations with people like Jenna and Ozzy. I certainly walked away with the sense of oh, they are very hungry to play. They want to prove something different than they have this time rather than the other times they played beforehand. And I will say that does carry over into a lot of other old schoolers as well. So it has been so much fun to have people get to experience these interviews and all the great stuff that these people were able to provide. And yeah, now we get to do a little bit of our own puzzle solving, right? And fit these pieces together.
Yes. Okay. We're not 3D printing the puzzles, but we're going to put them together and take a look at based off of the information that Mike gleaned and what they're talking about and how they might want to play the game. So we may try to, or we will attempt to try to give you a sense of how this tribe might gel together when the season kicks off on February 25th.
Oh my God. Yeah. Rob, we are officially in the month that Survivor 50 is going to premiere.
Survivor month.
Exactly. This is wild. I mean, maybe I think a lot of people felt once these interviews started going live and we got these cast picks, etc., that it felt official. Are you in that mindset, or has something changed for you once all this information, once you've heard from the players themselves about their actual approach to the season rather than just pontificating about it for months at a time?
It does feel more real that we're getting into hearing what everybody is going to have to say. So it was sort of that there was a cast. It was just one day we'll get there. And now that we're starting to get into how they're going to play the game and what their strategies are, it does start to feel a lot more real that we're getting into the relationship. So this is a lot of fun this week.
Yeah, I am very excited to get into this group in particular because, yeah, I tried something new this time around. It was, again, my first returning player season. And so I pulled out this game, Friend or Foe. I wanted everyone to break down every single person from the cast. And so as a result, Rob, we can do a lot less speculation as to who wants to work with whom. We don't need to go off of loose descriptors or preseason vibes, though it seems like certainly some people are utilizing that as well in their assessments.
Okay, so how do you want to go through this list of people? Just go through them in the order they came out?
I think so. And let's start with a big one, shall we? Let's start with arguably the big one here. We've got to kick it off with the way we kick things off all the way back on Wednesday. We got to start by talking about our good friend, Dr. Christian Hubicki.
Yes. What a delight to hear from Christian. And you did a really great job with his interview. And he really gave you a sense of how he's looking at the game and what he wants to try and come back to do. And I really do feel like that nobody has given this more thought than Dr. Christian Hubicki.
To the point where he went on an extended, I don't know, lecture is a weird way to say, but he is a professor, so I guess it makes sense. Can we break down this a little bit, Rob? His casting trios theory?
Yeah. I think that he might be a little lost in the sauce on this one, with all due respect to my great friend, Dr. Christian Hubicki. I don't think, like, I think that he is like attributing like some like divine plan to a thing that from an outsider, maybe that there were concepts of a plan, but I think it's much more of a mishmash than I think he is giving it credit to, because I think that like especially when he's factoring in the Savannah and Rizzo into it all and putting them into certain boxes of rounding out the threes. And I mean, he has a category called like the normal people, and Colby is one of them. Like, I'm not sure necessarily.
To be fair, he has no information to go off of Colby, considering that this man apparently has not woken up from his cryogenic state in Ponderosa.
So I think there were some things that, okay, that makes sense. Okay, there's 3 of these, 3 of this, 3 of this. Okay, but I don't think every single thing was built in a trio with this triple redundancy of each type of person.
Well, triples are best, as we know. But I agree.
Yes,
Listen,
certainly.
he's essentially trying to categorize something that has kind of become uncategorizable, at least at this point. I do feel like early on, when you talk about Survivor in its early days of like, all right, we've got to have one of this type. We've got to have one of this type. I think, especially in the new era, we've kind of gone past that. But we'll run this down here for people who may not remember or did not check it out. First off, listen to my interview with Christian Hubicki. What are you people doing? Come on. But he broke things down essentially into 4 categories of 3 people each, 3 men, 3 women. We start with challenge beasts, where the men were Ozzy, Joe, Jonathan. The women were Stephanie, Tiffany, and Chrissy. I think one of the major misgivings that people have with this category is just due to his lack of knowledge about Savannah. In retrospect, would have easily, shuffled
maybe
her
more
about.
so than Tiffany.
I would think so. So I mean, Tiffany's certainly athletic, but I think compared to the woman who tied an all-time record, I think doesn't really hold a candle there.
Yeah. So, but again, I don't know what you necessarily are doing with that information of here are the 3 challenge beasts, here are this. So I think that there was some utility in terms of like, okay, each of these tribes is probably going to have one of these people. And so, okay, probably Joe and Jonathan and Ozzy aren't going to be on the same tribe, although Joe and Ozzy are on this tribe with him. So I don't know. There wasn't really you can get a little bit tripped up by this.
Yeah. So the next category, just running them down, the drama people, Coach, Q, and Rizzo, Angelina, Jenna. He puts Savannah in there, but I think if you swap her with Tiffany, that makes sense. Comic relief is him, Rick Devens, Mike White, Aubrey, Emily, and Camilla. And then this is, I think, where the theory distills down to, Rob. I think the entire utilization of this is, not just like a fun thought experiment, but I think these are the 6 people that he is specifically looking to target in this game. He thinks these are the 6 people that stand the best chance of winning.
Okay,
and that
give me
is
those 6.
Charlie.
Okay.
Kyle.
Okay.
Mr. Farty himself, Colby, apparently.
Colby, I do not see as being a person that has an extremely great chance of winning. So I think that that's probably somebody that Christian doesn't need to worry too much about.
And then Genevieve, Dee, and Cirie.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are a lot of chalk picks, but they didn't build the season that way. And so like, I feel like that this would be like a great fodder for a podcast conversation, but I'm not sure necessarily if it is going to provide it. And it'll be interesting to see down the road, like if he says, actually, Rob, this was my secret weapon. This is what got me the win, my theory. I don't know how much utility there is in terms of like once the bell rings.
See, I can understand it because of the headspace he has going into this, which is his entire core concept of playing with quote unquote narrative warfare, right? He's putting down the calculator. He's picking up the pen. It is his turn to wield this idea of storytelling as some sort of device to bring people over to his side. He talks, for example, about how he wants to take Cirie to the end by approaching her and being like, the thing you're afraid most of in the world is like, not getting to a final tribal council. Let me be that person for you. So I think more so he's utilizing this idea of like, okay, based on the agenda you sort of have coming into this, based on your previous Survivor history, let me utilize that and give you what I think you need in this particular season.
Yeah, I think that that's interesting, the narrative warfare and being able to look at things not necessarily from a numbers perspective, but from the story that everybody is seeing. And so maybe this theory of threes helps him be able to craft this story, and maybe even starting from this theory he has of the theory of threes that he's going to be able to share with people. I just don't believe that that's how they put the season together. And so if it helps to sell the narratives, that's one thing. But as far as like how they decided on what people were going to be on the cast, I don't think that really is super useful.
Well, let's talk about something else that Christian has on his mind here, Rob. The big bomb that he dropped at the end of the interview, though I will admit I missed the first time he mentioned it. I will, especially going back when he says he's not the only parent from David versus Goliath here. Listen, I had a lot of things on my mind, just in one ear, out the other. Definitely my reaction, though, makes up for it at the end of the interview. But what do you make of this? Like,
of Mike's reaction? I'd say that Mike Bloom had a breathless reaction to finding out that I wonder if Christian's wife had the same reaction that Mike did at the news.
Part of me did wonder, because not to talk too much about our setups, but like, listen, we are sometimes in proximity to each other's sites. Like, I was worried that if someone was walking past, they might have heard me gasp and be like, "Oh my God, what was he talking about with Mike?"
Michael was like, what?
So I guess the question is, Rob, like, if Christian gets to the end and drops this piece of information, what is going to be the reaction from these people?
I mean, good problem to have. I do wonder if people might be like, we're doing the Jeremy thing? Like, I wonder if the group is a jaded group. It'll just depend how much they love Christian at that point.
Yeah.
If they're annoyed with him and they feel like that they weren't going to vote for him anyway, they'll say like, "Oh, really? Are we reheating Jeremy's nachos?" And if they love Christian, they'll have the reaction that Mike Bloom had.
I think it's confirmation bias completely. I think that factors a lot into like the revelations people make in a final tribal council setting, right? Like, look at Sue revealing her true age in 47, right? Like, that didn't necessarily move the needle because either people didn't care or, they'd already assumed that was the case, versus like some other big info drops that happened in something like 48. And maybe it's a bit apples and oranges, but I do feel like we've talked about this before. It's very tough to truly turn someone's opinion around 180. Shout out to Coach at a final tribal council setting. And so if you do reveal something big, we say this all the time. Adam did not win because of his mom. Jeremy did not win because of his kids. It more so substantiated, I think, the positive opinion the jury had of him on that last day.
Yeah. So Christian, I feel like he's really thought about these things so much. I hope for Christian that he has a lot of preconceived ideas and things that he wants to do and the way he wants to approach it. And I do think that the key to a game like this is being able to adapt to the circumstances as they unfold, more so than, okay, well, this is the particular group and this is the plan that I came up with that I need to execute.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. But I think that Christian, especially I would say as one of the people who has studied the new era the most out of this group of pre-40 players, is probably more adept for this stuff than others. I think where Christian's utility can come in, and we hear even some of his tribe members talk about it, is when we talk about roles in a season, if there's someone that's like, I'm not good with numbers, this guy is, he could sort of be, granted he's not the financial analyst on the tribe, but he could be the person that could be recruited of like, okay, you're going to help think through how we can work our way around this advantage or how we can utilize this to our advantage. The issue is going to be, just like we saw in David versus Goliath, even more so, I think, than David versus Goliath. If he makes it to the post-merge, how is he going to buck this perception at all of like, this dude's incredibly likable, he's incredibly smart, we cannot let him near the end?
Yeah, but how many people do you feel like are in that group that are going to be saying like, I need help with figuring out what to do with the advantage? Like,
I mean, Savannah said that she was looking for Christian for that exact reason.
That's true. I think Joe could be in that category.
I think Ozzy. Yeah.
So I am cautiously optimistic for Christian based off of how I feel like the other players are perceiving him.
I would agree so. I think the biggest issue is going to just be, either is he going to surround himself with enough people that don't feel as threatened by him, or people feel more threatened by those people than Christian. I think that is going to be one of the biggest things, not to sort of, compare him to the very person I'm speaking with, but it is a little bit of this idea of like, he did not win the game, but he is one of the biggest presences coming out of these first 40 seasons as represented on this cast. He can't help but be himself, and I love him, but the way he also presents himself is someone who is incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, Christian cannot dumb himself down really in any way, nor do I want him to, but that can be tough sometimes when people are like, we have to get rid of the smart people, and he is the smartest among us.
I feel like that the threat level for Christian, I feel like, is overblown. Like, and I don't know how that he changes this perception, where I feel like that the person you need to worry about the most is the person that you are just drawn to and not worried about. Like, oh, I want to work with that person so bad. So there were a couple of people that are feeling that way about Christian, but I just think that people seem so scared of him to the degree that I feel like if people are so scared of him, I don't think you need to worry about him as much, because he's never going to be the person where people just like, oh, we can't get rid of Christian. We love him too much.
And maybe part of it also comes from the expectations from watching them on TV versus actually interacting with them. This is going to, I think, be a big theme once these people's toes hit the sand of like, oh, I thought this person was this one way on TV, but now actually in talking with them, I feel one way or the other about them. That could be the case with Christian, where we know Christian's a very goofy guy. There's a reason why he put himself in the comedic relief category. If he is able to endear himself more of that mentality, then maybe it is something that people could feel like, okay, maybe he's not this like smart aleck, massive threat that I thought he was. He's the guy who's talking for odds on end about the fact that he felt he farted in front of Colby at Ponderosa, and now this guy hates his guts.
Yeah. I bet Colby doesn't mind a good fart.
I do not think so, nor do I think Colby even remembers. It's this classic anxiety trope, Rob, where I'm sure Christian was sitting up sleepless nights in the lead up to this season being like, I cannot believe I ruined my game with an outright living legend by passing gas in front of his face. And Colby, I'm sure a la Don Draper, did not think about that at all.
Yeah, Colby, I think if you farted in front of him, I think he'd be like, brother, did you just step on a frog? Good one. You just rip one.
Right on.
Right on. Yeah. So I think that you would endear yourself to Colby by farting in front of him.
Show you're human. Exactly.
Yes. Yes. They would love that. So I don't think Christian needs to worry about that. Anything else you want to say about from Christian's interview?
I mean, there was so much to get into, but no, I think we can definitely talk about some of these.
Listen to the full interviews for all the great stuff.
I guess I'll end with his last prevailing theory that he sort of started our interview with, that he feels like deep down everybody is scared.
I like that. Yeah, that was good.
I thought that was a really cool idea about a returning player season in particular, that even the most confident people feel like they have something that they want to showcase, though they want to improve upon.
Fear leads to suffering.
I do think if you make that reference in front of Colby, maybe he would judge you more than the farting.
Yeah. You got a frog in your throat, Cesternino?
I may be many things, but I ain't no Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who did you feel like, Mike, in your conversations, who seemed the least afraid? You talked to 24 people.
I did.
Was there anybody who you felt like had the least amount of fear?
It's got to be Q. Now, of course, you have to wonder how much of that is put on, right? How much of that is this bravado that he has amassed throughout now one season and change of Survivor. But he had that confidence that we have seen before him without necessarily bringing that sort of vulnerability, right? Of like, I've made mistakes in my past. Like Q, not
big mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Not to foreshadow too much. He really just says he only made, in his opinion, one big mistake in his game. So I would say that he easily fits that category the most. But I think that Christian would feel like that makes it an even more exciting nut to crack.
Yep. Okay. Let's then talk about Cirie. And Mike, you had another extended interview with Cirie.
Talking about someone who's afraid of something. You blanched at besides the leaves. Yeah, you blanched at this idea though, but now you got to hear it straight from the mouth herself about Cirie's imposter syndrome.
Yes. Cirie's imposter syndrome, I'm sure, at one point, I'm sure it was very real.
Yeah, I'm entirely sure. And look, there's
Yeah.
also, I could not crack into too much about like her very specific mentality out of AU versus the world because I did not know what necessarily was going to happen on that season. But who knows? Maybe she was feeling a certain way about like making it to the final four and losing out again, and did that modify her headspace a bit coming into this as opposed to Game Changers? I mean, it should be noted, yeah, she played it Australian season, but this was the first time she's been back to Survivor since Game Changers, and so much has happened in her life since then.
Yes. Like what?
Went on Big Brother, went on
Uh,
Traders. Like she
yeah.
essentially
I
was
think you
able.
mean like she had, like some big things that happened in her
I mean,
personal
she
life.
did say, I believe, in the years since that she became a grandma
Yeah.
as well.
Okay. Yes, Cirie is going to have an interesting road here because I think there's going to be some people who are like falling over themselves that they want nothing more, like we saw with Lisa in Survivor, Australian Survivor versus the World. And then there's also people that are going to be threatening or threatened by Cirie. And I think that for her, she just needs to ID who are the people who are going to want to see her succeed
Yeah,
and surround herself with those people.
I did think it was interesting the amount of information she was able to reveal to me about Australia versus the world that she admits she took something away from it. And it's something that I talked about in my preview with Shannon and Bryce that, Cirie essentially doubled the amount of votes she received in Survivor history in AU versus the world alone. She had gotten so many votes due to the fact, I think, partially that like her and Parvati were seen as this duo. So anytime the other side was voting against them, can't vote for Parvati. She might have an idol. She's got this
Mm-hmm.
mysterious advantage. Let's vote against Cirie. And I think Cirie said it actually allowed her to maybe approach things with a little more flexibility. That's weird to say considering that she is someone who is now returning for a record sixth time. But the way she sort of verbalized it, right, of like, listen, I would take my people, and if I felt good about you, I would work with you. And if I didn't feel good about you, great. You're on the outside. Hope you vote for me in the end. It's an interesting mentality that it's taken her a little while to maybe figure out and incorporate into her game.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most interesting things that she said about the idea of like, okay, well, if you said my name, you're done. And in the new era, these names are just coming out. Doesn't mean, hey, anything personal or I can never work with you. Just on this round, I happen to not be on the same side as you. Doesn't mean we can't still work together. So I thought that was really astute from Cirie to be able to say, I need to be able to work with people who weren't always with me.
Yeah, because remember, again, in her first four seasons, Cirie barely had anyone saying her name. In Game
Mm-hmm.
Changers, she could work with anybody because nobody was saying her name. She got 0 votes. And then I think
Well, because she also did not go to tribal council in the pre-merge.
exactly, but I think then almost in Australia versus the world, her hand got forced where she was getting so many votes that she's like, all right, I got to let bygones be bygones
Yeah.
personally. And I think that's something that, again, we don't necessarily think about with Cirie's game, right? We think about her being simultaneously warm but tactical. I don't think any of us would necessarily think like, oh yeah, Cirie is somebody that maybe takes on the Russell Hantz mentality of like, if you're not with me, you're against me. But she seems to feel like she had played that way her first 5 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she can be a little dug in at times with who she wants to work with and not. And we saw certainly in Heroes versus Villains that led to
Yeah.
her downfall. So it's nice to see that she is a little bit more flexible in terms of how she's going to approach things. One of the things I think that is always going to be fun to track when you're talking about Cirie on a Survivor season are who are the people that she is giving nicknames to. This is one of the
Yeah.
things over her Survivor career. Typically, when Cirie is giving you a nickname, it's typically a bad thing. I would not say that it is as so deep as to dehumanize a person, but it does start to make them into a little bit more of a caricature. And if she is not calling you by your first name and is giving you some sort of a title,
Yeah.
Mister, even officer,
Officer Sarah, yeah.
yes, an honorific, I believe, as what Stephen Fishback would call it, then you will see that you are probably not going to be somebody that she wants to work with. We heard her use that a little bit. I think even about Savannah, I think that she was calling
the other lady, I believe.
the other lady, that she was like, I think Genevieve also was getting a nickname of the English teacher.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I guess they are sort of compared to I mean, there's also, though, the coach of it all, right? Now, maybe coach is different because he sort of already has a nickname. And so
Yeah,
if
she
she's
didn't name him coach.
exactly, if she's his name is Benjamin. But yeah,
He doesn't like that.
if you refer to that person by the nickname that you had already, I guess, anointed yourself with, that's okay. But I think that's a really astute observation. I think that's something fun to flag as the season goes along. Where, I mean, she said Q looks like the Terminator. That's another good shout out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when she's like only describing, if she starts calling Q the Terminator and not Q looks like the Terminator, I think that's where things are starting to be a problem for Q.
I mean, what's also interesting is that the way Cirie expresses who she feels like consistently goes after her, she says, "Oh, I don't understand why the Joes, the Colbys, the Tom Westmans, the Boston Robs, why they're so standoffish to me." And for what it's worth, she vocalizes like, if Colby was smart, he'd want to work with me.
Yeah. No, Cirie isn't intimidated by the alpha males, but there is like this weird sort of like rock, paper, scissors. It's like Cirie is like, I don't understand why the alpha males are scared of me. I want to work with them. And the alpha males are like, we gotta go after Cirie. But like, why don't these nerdy guys want to work with me? And, you know, Cirie's like, hey, we got to get out some of these nerdy guys. They're too smart. You know, everyone's like, well, why don't they want to work with me? But then they also have their own category of people. Like, I don't know if I trust that person. That's too smart.
Yeah, I think also there is this sort of like, I wouldn't even say stench. I guess perfume is more applicable of the Black Widow Brigade of like, well, you saw the guys they took out in that season. She could easily do it again. When Cirie is also like, I don't exclusively work with women every single time I play Survivor. You know, she worked with Otis. You know, she was working with James and Rupert on Heroes versus Villains. Like, she certainly can incorporate those types of people amongst her, you know, her repertoire. I think it is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, where now I think the legacy of Cirie is so tied to something like the Black Widow Brigade that people kind of automatically assume, oh yeah, she's going to be working with the women, and then they kind of exclude her to make her work exclusively with the women.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, anything else about Cirie you want to highlight?
No, I mean, I think we won't talk about her with this person because she's not part of the tribe, but I thought she had a really interesting perspective on her relationship with Stephanie, where she didn't feel like bad about Stephanie. She doesn't feel like Stephanie is going to get revenge. If anything, she's more so saying like, Stephanie's kind of like a puppy. Like, Stephanie is somebody who you need to coddle and reassure. Now, you know, we'll talk about this more on the Stephanie side of things. Stephanie has a really interesting perspective into like how her and Cirie were working together in Traitors. But I thought Cirie's perspective was really, really interesting, considering that if and when they meet up together, like, how will that relationship manifest again? And would Cirie want to keep up that relationship if she feels like it needs so much attention?
Well, she is very good at doing that and being a caretaker to people that are on the island and being able to make people feel good. I mean, I think that that's something that comes naturally to her, certainly even in her line of work, to be able to make people feel good and have a really good bedside manner and be a warming presence. So that's going to be something that she's able to do. However, the shift is going to be, and maybe Australian Survivor versus the World was good practice for this, but in the 26-day game, especially with 24 people, there's going to be tribal councils almost every single day. This isn't like you have 72 hours in between tribal councils where there is a lot of downtime where you really can work on those relationships and make people still feel good. You know, the game is going to be like boom, 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 boom. Like who's around me that's in my numbers, as opposed to who's consistently making me feel good during the downtime.
Yeah, I mean, it's this gonna be a very weird metaphor, but I think Jeff would love it. It's like a frozen pizza, Rob. I think in a 39-day game, you could put it in the oven. You can give it some time and create that more authentic flavor. In a 26-day game, you kind of have to nuke it in the microwave. You have to be like, all right, listen, this is good enough. I need to get somewhere super quick. I need to eat this as soon as possible.
Yeah. Who's the frozen pizza in this analogy? Stephanie?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, like
is
a relationship.
It a filet mignon pizza?
There we go. That would also freeze horribly. I don't know if I would want to have a frozen filet mignon pizza. Maybe that's how GG's went under. They went into their own a la Gusteau's, their own frozen food lineup.
I saw on TikTok, if you freeze a steak and then put it in the air fryer, it's supposed to be really good.
Okay, listen, I might try that out.
Okay,
might have to utilize that. What do you think, Rob, about Cirie's endgame chances here? Because listen, one of the reasons why she's back is because she finally She wants that win. She says this is officially her last time. The reason why she's here is because she feels like she needs to prove her own legacy by getting this win. Do you think it will actually happen? Or do you think due to her opposition, she will fall mercilessly short once again?
The sheer chances of any one person being like, okay, I feel good about this person winning is going to be very astronomically small. Like, I feel like even the person you say I feel the best about maybe has a 10% chance to win. But Cirie, I do feel like I feel very good about her chances to go far into the game, because I just think that at the end of the day, there are going to be more people around who are very invested in seeing her do well. I think it's a wish fulfillment for a lot of the longtime super fans that are there to want to work with her. And so I think that she will be able to, like, always have, maybe in any given tribe, 4 or 5 people who are very invested in seeing her do well. And so I think that she's somebody who I believe will get to the end game.
I think the big asterisk there is if she's able to get past these first initial stages. I think this is actually very akin to game changers for her. And we'll get into this a little bit, because I do think she has some people that are flagging her as foe early on. And enough of those people get together, that might be tough.
Will she ever be on a tribe with enough of those people? I would say, listening to, your interviews and seeing things, okay, at any given tribe, there might be 2 or 3 people, but like, will she ever get swapped to a group where there are 5 of those people?
I mean, it's a bit like Sandra in Game Changers, no? That, like, she, despite the reputation coming in, she was in a really good spot, and all it took was a very bad swap for everyone to be like, all right, I think we should get rid of Sandra now. Because I largely agree. I think, once again, we thought Cirie would be in danger. She has arguably the biggest reputation, even more than people who have won the game coming into this season. But there's just this effortlessness, yet effort she puts into your relationships, where she is able to make you feel so incredibly special and valued. She has this magic that she has been able to bottle and sip on every time she enters a reality TV season. And I think this time will be no different. I think you bring up a great point about the reverence around her, because it's also not like, oh my God, I want to see Cirie, but she's such a challenge beast. Oh my God, I want to work with Cirie, but she's a winner. It's more so like, I want to hang out with Cirie. I want to get to know Cirie. I want to be best friends with Cirie. And so I think as long as she is not within a group of people who all sort of agree, oh my God, yeah, we are not giving her a chance right now, I think she, as improbable as it sounds, stands a really good shot at yet another deep run. Could it be a winning run? I'm not sure, because I talked about this on the preview as well, that I think, particularly when it comes to like things you can bank on to get yourself to the end, right? Of fire making, of challenges, not 2 things that Cirie is particularly strong in. And so I think there could be a world where it's like, all right, well, we got to turn on Cirie now. And if she doesn't have those things in her back pocket to back herself up, that could be when she's the most in danger. But we'll talk about a possible partnership that she could have very early on with somebody here on her tribe. Like, if they are able to lock in, they could really wreak some havoc on this season.
Mike, has Cirie ever won individual immunity?
She has won 1 individual challenge in her entire Survivor career.
And it was the same challenge that it was touchy subjects, correct?
That's exactly it.
Yes.
Only legends win touchy subjects.
That's right.
That's why they had to retire it.
I too have 1 challenge. Oh, it was an immunity challenge, though. I too have 1 challenge win exactly.
Yeah. So, and who knows, maybe, Cirie is able to come in. We saw Tony, right? Like, Tony memorably did not win any challenges really in Cagayan, and then wins 3-4 in Winners of War. So you never know.
Okay. All right. Mike, let's talk about who's next. Was it Emily?
Let's talk about Emily.
Let's talk about Emily. I'm excited. Let's talk about Emily.
Yeah, let's get into this, because again, I feel like I couldn't really verbalize specifically her rationale for coming back. But now that you've heard it straight from sort of the Flippin's mouth here, what was your take on her rationalization for, I did not like the way the final state that I rested in Survivor 45?
I really don't know. I have to take so much of this with a grain of salt, because, Mike, as your friend, I'm angry because I feel like people are lying to you.
I'm such a doormat.
I don't know, but I don't know why. I don't know why. Like, I kind of feel like that this ground of the preseason, like, what's fun about this is, like, Mike's not going to tell people.
No, I'm
Like,
not
just
gonna.
be real. Just keep it real with us. And
I mean, to be fair, Emily kept it very real talking about her competition.
And that's the thing that I think is so interesting, where I think that people, when it comes to talking about the other people, are extremely unguarded and like
Yeah.
ready to go. I don't think anybody is lying to you about what they think about other people. But when you ask them what they think about themselves, I feel like a lot of like, oh, that's interesting. That's very uncharacteristic. And Emily Flippin consistently says, I'm a bad liar. I'm bad at lying. Emily Flippin is a great liar. Emily Flippin, respectfully, with love, Emily Flippin is an incredible liar. She's lying to you when she says she's a bad liar. Go watch all of the Blood on the Clock Tower games that she's in. She is a masterful liar. Incredible. One of the best liars there are. So Emily's an incredible liar. Did she have like a journey to like, I didn't want to play Survivor again, but then I did? Perhaps. I don't know. It's hard to say now, but I think that Emily does a thing. And I think that what she does well is that she is able to sell this version of like, oh, I suck. I'm humble. Like, I'm not good at this. What? I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that she's able to the point where even Cirie is like, oh, I just want to work with her.
But she's a porcelain doll. She just wants to fix her hair.
So I think Emily could be incredibly dangerous in this game. And again, that to get inside the minds of these Survivor players, like, are they already thinking about like, okay, well, that if I give you like what I'm really thinking now, I'm really going to be screwed for the third time I play. Or,
that's interesting.
I'm really going to be screwed for when I'm on the Traders. I don't know if that's the headspace that people are in, but I feel like
that may be weird though, because then it's like, I'm not going to give away what I'm feeling about myself. Instead, let me show my cards very much about how I'm feeling about everyone else who I could play with also down the line.
Mm-hmm. So I just think that Emily, if you are buying Emily Flippin is not a good liar and is somebody that they're going to be, I don't believe in myself. She does. And I think that you will be sorely mistaken. And I say this all with respect and love, because I think that she is an incredibly intelligent and sharky player. But I think that she is doing a good job of wearing that camouflage of being the person who is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like, I'm confused. I don't believe in myself. And I think that might be able to really help her in that game, because I think she's really good at selling that.
Yeah, I mean, I think she could certainly present herself, right? As like, people remember her, I would say, more personal transformation more than like the reason why she was idled out was because D clocked her as one of the biggest threats for her to win.
Yeah.
And so I think she could definitely bank on that emotional aspect of her game more so than the strategic aspect.
And I believe that she did not like that, like her last confessionals in the show were talking about how, oh, I need to be softer. And I think that she's like, wait, like, that's not what I need.
I think she also conflates softer with passivity. Like, she feels like the reason why I went out at the end of my story was like, oh, I sat back too much, and that's not who I am, which I think, again, is incredibly intriguing. Listen, we talk with people all the time, right, who are not entirely happy with their edits. I don't think Emily's necessarily saying that, but she's more so using it as like a personal reflection for herself.
Yeah, and I think that softer is the wrong word. I think that she probably got more when she became warmer in the game, and I think that is not necessarily a negative.
Ask Angelina about being warmer.
There's certainly two parts of charisma, and that there is the ability to have a proficiency where you are somebody who like knows what they're talking about, and then also to be warm. And I think that what Emily did was start to embrace some of that warmness in the game. I don't think it's necessarily a softness. I don't think you would ever necessarily describe Emily as being soft, but it is interesting that she could be on a full like 360-degree arc of Survivor to say like, actually, when I called out Bruce on the mat, that actually was the right version of me. And I needed to go on this whole journey of self-discovery to get back to that person.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what New Era Survivor is, right? And what she's been advertised as, like, look at what this adventure can transform you into. She's more like, no, what it transformed me into was the mindset that I actually was fine the way I was going into this game. And that's why I saw some comments, obviously, in Her Friend or Foe being like, close enough, welcome back, episode 1 and 2, Emily. Because I think that's also who she is. And I see...
You won't see that on the beach, though. She will be, like, on the beach, she is going to be sunshine and rainbows.
I mean, I think that
confessional Emily will be different. And I think that's perfectly that's the right way to play Survivor.
I mean, I see your points about how much is she fabricating this, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I personally feel like maybe I'm just, being lied to like a rug, but this idea well, yes, that's a matter of fact, but this idea that I think Emily is, as she espouses to me, sort of like a natural pessimist. Like, I do think Emily's natural resting state is to be like, I mean, her entire thing that she talks about in her bio, she talked about with me towards the end being like, listen, if I win, it's going to be this incredibly weird set of circumstances. Like, I don't think I'm going to win this season. I do not think she's, of the opposite of Colby blowing smoke up my ass. I don't think she's necessarily going to be like, I can't do that. I think there is a part of her that does legitimately feel that way. And so I think that that's going to also be an interesting sort of push and pull for her is like, and that's another reason why, like, maybe she felt when she got that Bruce blindside, she got a little too giddy about it because, when you're a pessimist and you're like, oh, I did this thing, that's really cool. You almost sort of like overextend yourself in the other direction.
But I think that there's a difference in sort of like, I think she's a realist. And I think that for there is like some percentage of a chance that she could be the winner of the season. But is it likely? It is not. And she is a numbers person. I think she knows this of like best case scenario. Is there a 5% chance that she is the winner of the season? Yeah, there is some bank shot where ultimately she's able to pull it off. But is the chance that she's going to win only 5% because she doesn't believe in herself? I think not. It's just that for any given player, especially in her profile where she's not going to be able to rely on winning challenges, doesn't come in with a ton of built-in alliances, it's going to be a long shot. But I think that Emily is an extremely self-confident person who I think is very much believing in her own abilities.
I mean, I could see something with her relationship with Dee that could be a turning point for her. Sort of like what happened with her relationship with Caleb, where it could be something where, like, if a bunch of people are saying, okay, we've got to get rid of Dee, it's not like she is going to necessarily, stick her neck out to protect her. Maybe she'll hope that Dee stays just because they have a friendly relationship. It could also be something where if she decides to turn on Dee, right, she doesn't want to be the Rupert. She doesn't want to lose to the same person twice. That's embarrassing for her. That could be another moment where we see history repeat itself and people say, look at what Emily did. If Emily got rid of...
I'd be surprised if that's how it turns out. I think that the New Era people, by and large, I see them sticking together for the most part, especially when there is a pre-existing relationship. So I get it that Emily does not want to lose to Dee. I would be very surprised if at any point Emily is leading the charge to get Dee out of the game.
Yeah, I think that is a good overall perspective on the New Era. I think the exception would be sort of our bookends here. I think Jonathan is very eager to jump over to the old school players. And I think as we'll get into with Savannah in particular, her and Rizzo
are a storm for Savannah.
Yeah, but it's this idea of like the assumption, as you're saying, of like all these people, especially 45, 46, 47, 48, go to each other's events. They're all talking with each other, doing collaborations with each other. We have not necessarily been a part of that crowd. So it's more so, in this case, like the devil you don't know than the devil you watch on Instagram all the time.
Okay. Should we talk about Jenna Lewis?
Let's get into
I loved your interview with Jenna Lewis. I thought that she was so fun. I thought she was so real. I loved how much she's thought about certain things. I love that she brought the CD player to go to Ponderosa.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I'm intrigued to hear from your perspective, Rob, because I mean, you were, I think, part of the last major time we've seen Jenna be affiliated with Survivor, both on All Stars and obviously with the show that the two of you did. Were you surprised at all by the sort of energy and candor she came into this interview with?
I would say a little bit
Mm,
because I did not keep up with her to the degree where like I knew she was very actively watching the show, and it sounds like that she has kept up with it to a level
yeah.
where she was citing like certain facts. And again, I don't know if she had just really done a deep dive because of Survivor 50 and went back and was paying close attention to everything, but I was really impressed with her level of preparation. From a physical standpoint, you knew that she was always going to be like, I don't think that she was in any better shape for Survivor 50 than she would have been had Survivor gone off the air 15 years ago. She's just going to always be, that's who she is. In terms of her tenacity, she's really like as tough as they come, and had some really cutting lines on the other cast members, which I
Ooh,
think is
yeah.
also very fun, very old school. And she had some very interesting reads of people in terms of like clocking maybe some of their Achilles heels, and in a way that was very uncommon to hear Survivor players talked about in terms of how she was sizing them up. Is she accurate? Some of it made sense. Some of it was clock that T. What is that right?
Listen, you should know the body is tea. So you're a tea expert at this
It's all
point.
T.
It's all tea all the way down. That's the astronaut meme. But yeah, I do think that first off, talking about Jenna was an absolute hoot. To say she was shot out of a cannon would be an understatement. And like you said, I think a lot
She
of
always
people.
is.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily know. I think the assumption is,
Rudy said, you know, that big mouth Jenna.
and she will admit that as well. But what people may not have thought was like, oh, she hasn't been on the show in 20 years. She doesn't watch anymore. They just brought her in because they wanted someone from the first season. And maybe that's true, but I think that Jenna is sort of like that perfect mentality. Because here's the thing. She may be, and this is going to be Jenna's sweet spot, I think, from a perception perspective. I think people who want to work with the old school players will be like, she's from Borneo. They barely had strategy back then. That's perfect. She's going to want to stick it out with this alliance. But Jenna is, I think, the most like new era coded old school player, if that makes sense. Like the line she had, right, was like, I'll make you like me and then I'll slit your throat without you noticing. Like, I think Jenna is incredibly keen on playing a very savage game. I think the issue is going to lie with like, she's clearly going to buck that perception. How quickly will it happen? Is she going to hit the ground running, hit the beach running, and be like, okay, we're going to cut this, and this person? Because then that's immediately going to be betrayed. Or is she going to slow play this? You know, is she going to try to give a bit of that realtor, like, let me sell you on me. I'm going to give you what you want, and then you're going to make the deal with me. And then the knives will come out.
I don't love this particular tribe that she's in for how she wants to come back. I would love if she was like on the tribe with Jonathan. I think that would have been such a good fit for her. She also talked about the young guys pulling them in and being
The
a
Oedipus
mommy
complex
to some of the younger guys. And she's here with all people that are at least late 30s, or maybe everybody here is, I'm not sure. How old is Rick?
Yeah, I would say Christian is the youngest, and he's 39 years old.
Okay. Yes. So she's here with like the dads.
Yeah, I mean,
Father.
Quite literally with Christian.
Ozzy is a father, but he is not
Zaddy's and
to our
daddies.
knowledge. Yes. So yeah, I don't love the tribe makeup as much here for Jenna Lewis. I think this is like kind of a tough draw in terms of the crowd. Although that she did say she wanted to work with Savannah, who's here.
Yeah, she really wants to work with Savannah because I think it's interesting to hear about like Jenna's opinions on a specific couple people on her tribe. Or like she loves Savannah because she feels specifically there's something very cunning about her, something she could relate to her on. But obviously, I think the big takeaway is how much she does not want to work with Cirie.
She doesn't want to work with Cirie.
She does not trust her at all.
Emily Flippin called her irrelevant,
which was maybe one of the best sound. I mean, listen,
a little out of pocket.
But that's what we love about this, right? That's the entire purpose. Like, that's the thing about Jenna is like, again, I do not know how this is going to bear out on how she does, but those reads, and I'll call them reads with a capital R, were
reads.
Exactly. Were so much fun. You know, like as much as I love Christian, like you heard me react to her calling him the Chucky doll. Like I was howling at just that comparison. And then her jumping to James and the Giant Peach to Lieutenant Dan. She was going through a whole Rolodex.
Like a lot of references. Listen, I will say this, Jenna Lewis, if you are giving references that Mike Bloom doesn't know, that's maybe your signal. You've gone out too far out on the limb.
Down my porthole of the Death Star. Like, that was the one pop culture reference.
The only time ever where she's like, oh, you know this? And Mike Bloom is like, actually, I'm not familiar with that reference.
Yeah, I've become very well acquainted with Dungeon Crawler Carl since Godfather himself, I suppose, of fantasy literature.
Yes. Okay, if you say so. But very excited to see Jenna Lewis back. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I think that she is going to provide such great sound bites because I think that she kind of comes in with this DGAF attitude in the confessional perspective, at least. I do think she has the ability to, again, be very warm and be very personable. But I think, again, what's so fun about her is she has this adamancy and she has this ability to turn it on. I also love that she's like, all right, the winter killer's back. See you later, D. I want to work with Kyle and Savannah.
Yeah, but I think she also is very comfortable in her skin and is very comfortable saying, like, I am going to get close to this person. I'm going to pretend to be nice to them. Here's the exact compliments I'm going to give, but I don't mean it. Like, I'm just going to say these things. So I think that she was, if of the people we talked to, she was extremely honest with you, Mike, and I appreciate that.
What did you make about her flattery strategy?
Yeah,
this idea of like,
I'm
going to compliment you, but on something that you've never been complimented about before. Angelina's physicality, Genevieve's walk.
Yeah, I think it's a great strategy and it's very disarming. And I'll just give you an example from my life where this worked on me. Okay. I do the exit interview, and when I do the exit press, that the person comes on and they like, hey, how are you? And I'm on with Charity Nelms. And Charity Nelms said to me, like, oh my God, you have such nice teeth. And I was like, oh my God, nobody's ever said that to me before in my life. I was so charmed by Charity.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? Maybe this should be a challenge to people out there. Of course, we love being able to reach out to those that you adore and just let them know how you feel. But try to find something about them that you think nobody has complimented them on.
It was really good. I was like, wow.
Find
great Charity Nelms.
You know what? Find their Dungeon Crawler, Carl. Find their one thing that they've never gotten in their life.
Yeah. Okay. Let's now go to then after Jenna Lewis. Oh, it's Joe.
Friend.
So the funniest thing that made me so happy, brought a big smile to my face as I was listening to the interview with Joe. I forgot how much Joe adores Mike Bloom. I had forgotten that Joe was so impressed with Mike in season 48. He's like, wow, you're the best. You're the best. And
you
then
wanted me to be on Oprah.
Midway through, like, oh yeah, Joe is just like over the moon over Mike Bloom.
Likewise, listen, it's incredibly mutual. I really, because Joe is somebody who, again, I think will speak from the heart. And we talked about this during the kickoff, but Rob, I'm intrigued to get your perspective now that you've heard from him. This weird headspace that Joe exists in. And look, you had said during the kickoff, like, you don't need to change much. And it sounds like, for what it's worth, he is copying that same type of strategy.
I actually am pretty bullish on Joe after listening to the interview. Well, it sounds like he has a ton of friends out there. So that's really good. But I think that Joe was kind of in a bad spot in Survivor 48. I don't think that Joe is really built in Survivor to be the guy. I think that Joe reminds me of if he was like a dad that like my kids were friends with his kids, everybody would be like, oh, you know who's the best? Joe. He reminds me of my brother who has like a million friends from kindergarten. My brother is just surrounded by friends. Everybody I think that comes into contact with Joe just loves him like as a great guy. as like the boss who's running everything, I think he was kind of like not suited for that. And I don't think that Joe really dealt well with when people were saying things behind his back and weren't necessarily loving his leadership. But if there's some other person who is the person, the guy or the gal who's running everything, and Joe is just part of that, like, I definitely could see a scenario where Joe in the final 3 of that season is the guy with the great social relationships that everybody loves. So I think that if Joe was able to make the final 3 in a season and be seen with somebody like a South Pacific coach, where, he's there with somebody who has pissed some people off and is able to say to be like, hey, I never lied to you. I never lied to you. And we were always cool. And I won 6 challenges along the way. Like, I do see a way that Joe could win the game.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons why Joe lost is because of a scene we saw with Mary, for instance, in 48, where he goes up to her being like, yeah, listen, the reason why we voted off David is because of you. Yeah. And she verbalized it as a way to be like, okay, A, you're just talking to me because you need my jury vote. And B, why did you say I was responsible for being blindsided? And so I think that, yeah, it's almost like HR running the company, right? Like if you want more so that person to function as like this nice kind of piece of social levity without being necessarily assigned to the strategy around it. And I do feel like, again, as you mentioned before with these friend or foe questions, like Joe gave thought to all those friend answers. Like, I legitimately think he wants to work with all of these people. Now, granted, there are sort of different degrees of friends, right? Where it's like sincerely wants to vibe with them versus like they're dangerous. And so I'd rather have them on my side than not. And but go ahead.
I was going to say that I think that people have cataloged this, that you asked 23 other people, friend or foe. I think he said 20 of them were friends, and 2 of the foes were the 2 people from 49 that he never met yet.
So the one exception was Camilla. And it's interesting when you talk about Camilla versus Kyle, because Kyle, he says all these things. What was the phrase he used? Like, Kyle pants me on national television and Camilla pushed me over him. Like these 2 absolutely showcased my foibles in the game and on the show as well. But he still has this like spot in his heart for Kyle. I think much like we saw with Kyle's arc in 48, I think he's having a tough time sort of extricating like what Kyle did to him versus like his one-on-one relationship with Kyle. So he was like, yeah, Kyle took me to the end, so like he's gonna be my friend. And it's like, one of the reasons why Kyle took you to the end is because he thought he could beat you. So, the fact that he's even willing to work with him there, but like simultaneously shut out Camilla, which is also going to be intriguing because wasn't Camilla's big thing also like, well, I didn't tell anyone how close I am with Joe. I don't know if it's entirely mutual after watching back 48.
Yeah. I think for Joe, he needs to figure out how does he become somebody else's Kyle, and not necessarily that I'm talking about secret relationship or, like being able to throw somebody under the bus. Cause again, that's not Joe, but just to be seen as sort of like the second in command of the alliance and get to the end and then have the good relationships where everybody on the jury is pissed off at some other person who they see as the reason why they are over there in a negative way. And Joe can be able to be his full self and be able to like really highlight the relationships that he made along the way and his story. And so I think that there is a path for Joe.
I think as well that the image of Joe that people are assuming right now is much more threatening than what they're going to get. Ozzy espoused this in my interview with him, where he's like, he made it to the end. He was this big power player and he finished in 3rd. Clearly, he's going to come in wanting to change some things. When the fact of the matter is, he really isn't. And part of that is because maybe he's still a little confused as to why he lost. Part of it might just maybe him being like, well, listen, it got me all the way to day 26. Let me just run it back again. And so I think once people like Ozzy start realizing that, no, Joe does actually, like, that's just who he is at the end of the day, and he wants to play to that core, that's going to endear himself a lot. We talk about what is the perception of this guy? Oh, the biggest, the biggest weakness in his game was that he was too loyal to a certain group of people, and that was his blind spot. That is a fantastic thing to sell somebody as to why you would want to work with them.
Yeah. Why? What's your biggest flaw? Like, I'm too honest.
That's exactly it. So the drawback I would have with that is Yeah, I could see a world where Joe wins in a final three, where like he is looked at as sort of the lesser of two or three evils. The larger issue I would have is that I do think with Survivor 50, with the importance of Survivor 50, and especially this cast feeling a reverence for being on this season, for being one of 24 representatives, I think they are looking to crown someone who has a killer instinct.
Fair.
I think that Joe, despite his last name, is not a hunter. He is more likely to adopt an animal rather than go after it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I think that if Joe is sitting at the end, I don't know him necessarily a like, hey, I wasn't as bad as this guy and we had some really good times together is going
Okay.
to be a winning pitch.
Yeah, I think that maybe the winning pitch for, and that's a very fair point. I think that probably the more likely winning scenario is Joe's the last person left from his alliance, and he wins immunities at the end of the game, and that there was this other, like, voting block that was in control of things, and he was the last person left from his alliance, and he wins 3 immunities and final. I don't know if they're going to do the final 4 fire making, but he sort of ends up like comping out to the end, and then ends up sitting in the final 3 against 2 other people that were more in control of the votes, but he has more friends on the jury.
Which is interesting, as we'll talk about our next person, that like Ozzy sort of made that comparison between Brad and Sarah Lacina in Game Changers. I know, granted, Brad seemed to have much less of a social game, and I think that would be the key to maybe get Joe over the line. Is like if this guy, maybe was not necessarily at the forefront of the gameplay, but he made you feel good, that could be a bit more of a nudger than in that last returning season.
Yeah, and last thing on Joe, that going back to his, I think, legitimate hurt over not winning season 48. I do think he comes in with like a vulnerability, and I mean that like in a positive way, where I think he can talk about what happened and how it really was hurtful, that he felt like that he gave everything to these people and they didn't receive it. And I think that it could be something that people really are able to endears him to people when he opens up about that.
I think, for what it's worth, like Joe is an incredibly down-to-earth person just to talk with. And I think especially when you compare him to some of the other people that might be espousing the same values, Colby, Coach, Jonathan, etc., he is definitely like the least, I would say, polarizing personality maybe out of that group. And so even if you don't necessarily vibe with those circumstances and that way of playing the game, he's a good hang. He's a very good person to just like have a heart to heart with. It's a reason why, again, he did so well in 48. And so I think, especially if he decides to join up with those people as well, he's someone who really wants to work with the old schoolers too. Like he could sort of be looked at as like, all right, listen, I know that he wants to go to the end with this group, but like just cool. Like I could talk with Joe. I don't know if I could talk with someone like a Coach.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go from Joe to Ozzy.
Let's talk Oscar, Rob, please.
Oscar,
he's a jungle man now.
I thought that was really interesting that Ozzy, I mean, he's not going by Oscar in the season,
no,
right?
I like as soon as they hit the the beach on that first day, Jeff's like, so Ozzy. So I think it's a metaphoric name only.
Ozzy was not unlike Rizgod in terms of that.
Both challenge
Ozzy,
beasts as he clocks.
Yes, as he clocks. Ozzy talks about that Ozzy was a character that he put on for Survivor. And I do think that is very interesting to hear him describe that persona that way. And I think that's really interesting. And I'm fascinated by performers who talk about that they have this other identity that they become when they are doing their thing. And so I think that was really, really interesting to hear him talk about his former self as that, and that he's actually found out that the Ozzy persona like worked at a period of time. But when we saw in Survivor Game Changers, when he was no longer, that wasn't exactly who he was, and he tried to bring that to Survivor Game Changers, it didn't resonate. But there is a different version of himself, Oscar, that he's going to bring to this season, and we don't know what the results might be for this different persona.
Yeah, I will say that Ozzy's interview was one of my most surprising. And there were quite a few, especially amongst those from the earlier seasons, because again, I think a lot of us came with the assumption of, All right, Ozzy, time number 5. How many
Mm-hmm.
fish are you going to catch this time? How many challenges do you want to win? But I think, and listen, all of the talk can just absolutely be lost in the sauce once he ends up actually getting into the game. But Ozzy, I think, is coming in with at least the most well-rounded mindset. Yes, we have had times in the past where I'm sure he's done these interviews and is like, all right, well, this time I am going to have a social game and this time I am going to make relationships. But I don't know. I really do believe a lot of the introspection that he did in the past decade, all the stuff that he has been through, has really matured him a bit and has made him realize. I think you bring up a really good point about the way he verbalized the criteria for winners in the new era. Now, look, it's not a one size fits all. I think winners can be crowned with a lot of different pieces of criteria. We certainly saw this in the new era in particular. But Ozzy basically says, like, a type like me can't win anymore just repeating the same old moves. You know, I'm going to teach an old dog new tricks right now. We'll see again if it's able to become incredibly effective. But I think even just the idea of thinking on that and not defaulting back into the mode that he is used to playing, 100 plus or nearly 100 days of Survivor with is something that should be noted.
And I think that also what benefits Ozzy is I'm not sure how old he was when he first plays in Survivor Cook Islands. I know you said he's 43 now, but a lot of time changes us. And Jenna Lewis also talked about this. And I know from my own experience of when people saw me first play on Survivor, I was 24 years old. And now
So
I am
was
much
Ozzy.
older.
I just looked it up.
Yes, and life changes you in a lot of ways, and I think in most cases, often for the better and for the wiser. And I think that Ozzy comes in with a lot of life knowledge. I think Ozzy has always been kind of an introspective guy. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
we have a vision of Ozzy from maybe even more so from Micronesia as sort of like bratty Ozzy,
Well, a little bit
entitled
of South
Ozzy,
Pacific as well, his free agent mode.
free agent mode. Yeah. And that was still only a couple of years after, but that was, he went to go play that in, I think the summer of 2011 was when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still 15 years ago from that. And I think we saw a little bit more of a down to earth Ozzy in Game Changers, even though he wasn't as big of a personality. And I know just in my own interactions with Ozzy, I've gotten the chance to interview him. He talked about, some of the fantasy books that he likes to read.
And
So
who would have thought that both him and Emily love Brandon Sanderson, and B, that those interviews would come out around Brandon Sanderson announcing that he's doing a new Apple TV show as well. So it's kismet for all of them.
yeah. So he has an artist's soul, not artist's soul. And
Cirie would love that, by the way.
Mm-hmm. He's a fascinating guy who's done many, many things and has had a very interesting life. And so I think it's going to be very fun to watch him play. And I think that the types of things that we expect, if you were just sort of like a casual, like, oh yeah, I remember Ozzy, I know what he's going to be like. You may not know what he's going to be like.
I think it also partially, at least, might be out of necessity. Like Ozzy, he talked about this a bit in his Dalton Ross interview, but like he tweaked his back a little bit before Survivor 50 starts. Maybe that's a reminder to him of like, you are not that 24-year-old dolphin boy who can like wake up a little sore in the morning, but then just go win 5 individual immunities. Like there is a little bit in the case of this cast, the Suicide Squad meme of I'm like you, but better. When you have a Jonathan, even people like Joe, who wound up winning 4 individual immunities. Colby tied his record. Like, I think there also might be a little bit of reckoning from Ozzy's perspective of like, I am more of a representation of something in Survivor than I am a person right now. And I'm here to show that I am a person first and foremost. But it also might be, hey, if I can't necessarily bank on winning immunity, I mean, remember, like, he went out in Game Changers playing Get a Grip, which he won handily in Cook Islands and lost to Ty Trey. And so that might have also been a moment to him of like, oh yeah, maybe I'm not an auto win for as many challenges as I thought.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else on Ozzy?
I mean, I think we'll obviously get into this, but I mean, looking at maybe again the new page in his Survivor strategy book, not only the wanting to work with Cirie, but for her to be his best friend.
Best friend, yeah. So I'm looking forward to putting together what the tribe dynamics are going to be, and I think we might definitely start there. Let's talk about Rick Devens, who has been one of the more polarizing people in terms of what we've heard from the contestants in their interviews. People have big feelings about Rick Devens. Going back to, I remember in the original version that people were loving Rick Devens. You know what I'm going to say?
No, yes, I did. Yeah, like once he came back from Edge of Extinction, everyone was like,
yeah,
"Oh,
I
I'm over
remember
it."
I did a Survivor feedback show with Allie Lasher, who one of the queens of hot takes, and her hot take was, you know what? I don't like Rick Devens. And there were some people that were like, thank you, finally, somebody said it. And there are other people, what are you talking about? We love Rick Devens. And people, like, nobody is like, I'm lukewarm on Rick Devens. People have very strong feelings on Rick Devens.
The low rent shower. He's either
There's
hot
only
or
two
cold.
types of people in this world: people who love Rick Devens and people who can't stand Rick Devens.
Well, and so I also think, trying to fill in a bit of the blanks here, some of this might be filled in through the pregame of it all. And Emily alludes to as much in my interview with her, where she kind of feels like, I don't want to use the term performative because that has been attributed to Survivor players, perhaps controversially, in recent memory. But I think there is this idea that Rick, to a certain extent, we know Rick, he is this very cheerful, energetic guy. I think even he admits, though, that he is trying to put something on in pregame. He's got this Lion King shirt on, but it's not all Hakuna Matata right now. I think, what does Emily say? That she feels like he's coming across as inauthentic. And I think, not to spoil my other... not to spoil my other interviews, I think Rick has the most negative comments about him from the preseason in particular. They feel like Rick is being too smiley, that he's being too friendly with everybody, and that while on one hand it might be like, great, he wants to work with me, if he's doing it to everybody, he's kind of doing it to nobody from their perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really very interesting to hear some of these stories come out. And I've always enjoyed Rick Devens' company, and I enjoy having him on the podcast, but I like having people on the podcast who seem happy to be here.
I also think that, again, Rick, it also might be a bit, again, of a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, this is a guy who comes from news, so he knows how to cut a soundbite. Is there something in the back of people's minds of like, I'm talking to Rick, but is he just like packaging a headline that I want to hear rather than actually telling me the truth? But I think that's something that Rick acknowledges and wants to speak upon, right? That's the last thing he told me in our interview, is that he said he wants to be more vulnerable this time. He did feel like, maybe it was due to circumstances, feeling like he had his back against the wall for the entire latter half of the season, that he like very much put up barriers and did not want to emotionally connect with people because he consistently felt like the enemy. This time around, he doesn't necessarily want to do that. And I do think that would help Rick. I do think, as we'll get into it, like Rick could be someone who is in danger if this tribe goes to tribal council early, if they're just going off of these initial assessments. But I think, almost like we spoke about with Christian and Joe to a certain extent, like if Rick Devens gets time in this game and they get to see like, oh, that's just who you are as a person, you are this big goofball dad character, that's going to go miles for him.
Yeah, it will. I just don't know if people are going to give him that opportunity. The one person that was glowing about Rick Devens, though, was Christian, who talked about how he wanted to form this Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock.
Which is interesting, because when you were talking about like this Aussie character thing, all I thought of was the I'm Not Spock book.
Yeah. So he felt like that he sees Rick Devens, Christian sees Rick Devens as sort of like this swashbuckling Captain Kirk type who is going to come in, phasers out, ready to go. And Christian is in the background of like, there's a 92% chance that this is going to work and that they're going to be a good duo. But I kind of feel like them together, I feel like, is only enhancing both of the threat levels.
I mean, it's interesting that Rick wants to work with Christian, right? He says that he was the person he wanted to work with the most coming into this season, compares him to David Wright. He's another person that I think says, hey, I kind of want this strategist to bounce ideas off alongside. He's just not getting that energy from Christian right now. But I do think once they see each other on the beach, it's going to be fine.
And it seems like that Rick really got looped in by Stephen Fishback, who
gave
him a ton of info. Nobody from Survivor 50 is like, hey, Rob, what do you think about everybody?
Listen, maybe Fishback was doing the book tour, sliding to people's DMs, like, can you write a blurb for Escape? They're like, great. In exchange, can you give me intel on the Survivor 50 players?
You
have a book.
I have thoughts.
But what do you think about Steven's advice?
Yeah, I guess you have to go back in time like Marty McFly with The Tribe and I Have Spoken if you want to really know the scouting report on the Survivor 50 cast.
I was intrigued by Fishback's advice, apparently, to approach Ozzy. Now, maybe Steven knows like what the modern day version of
Mm-hmm.
Ozzy is, but he seems to be the one to really push Rick forward to be like, don't worry, if you talk to Ozzy, you're going to do great.
It seemed like that Steven had pretty consistent advice to, hey, just go up to this person and be straight up with them. And that's what they like. So I'm not sure if Rick was sharing the people that Steven said don't talk to, but it seemed like that was a very consistent piece of advice that he was giving.
So what do we think about Rick trying to take on this Tony 3.0 philosophy, right? Because one of the other things that might be working against him is this mentality of Rick Devens. He's really good at finding things. People may not remember this, but he won 4 individual immunity challenges. He nearly tied the record. That's as many as Joe won as well. So he could be a dangerous player. Do we think that he is able to sit on his hands enough in the first half of the game for people to underestimate him once more?
I think he's probably got to go full Rick Devens, and maybe it's like Tony Game Changers is the move.
Oh,
where
interesting.
That does Rick Devens go out and it's like, I think Rick has the idol. We can't vote for him now. Okay, let's come up with a safe plan. Like, is the only way out for Rick Devens to go further in, to just go and where it's like, okay, I can't believe he has an idol, or is it a fake idol? I don't know. But do we want that noise? All right, let's vote off this person.
That's a good point. Yeah, he could very much try to bring in ironically enough, the thing that he didn't need to do in Edge of Extinction, which is he almost always had an idol, so he didn't have to fake anything. If he does this time around, that is an interesting way to sort of weaponize that narrative, for lack of a better term, and be like, well, Rick wouldn't be lying about having an idol now. We assume he's made a record of finding and playing idols in a season. Maybe we should believe him. Let's not vote for him this time around.
My advice to Rick, I think, might be like, hit the beach and find the beware advantage.
I honestly think he'll show some restraint early on, but I bet you like day 6, he's going to be looking for idols.
Do it.
I just think I think especially because it's going to tie into this alternate narrative, right? As Rick talks about this story about the fact that in a different universe, maybe if you went back in the DeLorean and you just stole the sports almanac that is The Tribe and I Have Spoken, like, in a different world, Rick would not have been on season 50. And so there are these kind of 2 dichotomies, right? And inside him are 2 wolves right now of like, hey, practice restraint, practice patience. Don't try to prove to people that you're the threat they think you are. And also like, come on, you weren't supposed to be here in the first place. Have fun. Look for idols.
Come on.
Like, I think those are who's going to win out. I think honestly is going to be an interesting battle.
They're going to vote you out anyway. Just have fun.
And so I really think the latter is going to take over at the end of the day. I think that sort of, again, speaks to the spirit that a lot of people are coming into 50 with, which is very much the Mike White attitude, which is it fun? Which is okay, well, listen, I have fun doing this on Survivor. People are going to like it. I am going to eventually just hit the jungle searching for things. I think that he will practice what he preaches, especially past the first vote. If he feels like he is not going to be the first voted out of his tribe, then he's going to feel like the leash has loosened a little bit. And then he's like, all right, let me go grab my bones.
When you say grab my bones, you're not talking about the third person in his alliance with Christian, right?
People were saying Cirie could be the bones because of her medical background, by the way.
I do not think Cirie is going to be...
To be fair, the way she felt about Christian does feel very McCoy and Spock, right? Of like, they just do not see eye to eye.
Yeah. But it's just in terms of like, hey, do you want to be in our Star Trek alliance, Cirie?
Rick's got a lot of names, right? He has the Mothership Alliance. Maybe speaking of Star Trek, he's got the Lunatics Alliance going on.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about one more person. Savannah is here. The winner. She's the winner of Survivor 49.
You don't need to whisper about it, Rob. Everyone was speaking about it too, the high heavens. And it's interesting because I think it came from 2 different categories. There's a lot of questions as to, first off, like, I talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, but let me also state it here because we'll talk about it next time with Rizzo as well. When it came to the Survivor 49 players, we were told as the press to not get into any details about the season because it had not aired. And so when people are telling us things, they are going off of what they have heard and what they have seen. They did not know, technically speaking, Rizzo and Savannah's names. I think that was something that either was provided via a list before they flew out there, or as Savannah is alluding to on social media as of late, perhaps some 49ers, believe it or not, Rob, were a little messy behind the scenes and may have slid into people's DMs and informed them about the resumes of these 2.
But they did know their names, like at Ponderosa and everything.
No.
Cirie told you that she never trusted a person named Rizzo.
Yeah, but you have to remember that what they saw of the preview of 49 had Rizzo in it.
Yeah.
That's why, like, people think that by saying the other lady is shady, I sincerely do not think she knew Savannah's name.
Okay. All right. Well, here is Savannah, who couldn't really talk too much about her Survivor 49 performance, but now here we are all caught up, and we do know about her Survivor 49 game. I thought it was interesting that she did seem to be a little bit more at home with some of the old school players that she has reverence for, and seemed to be a little bit more threatened by the new school players. Maybe because she feels like, hey, I bet they're all talking. And so if anybody feels like an outsider, it's probably the old schoolers. And so I can relate to those people who kind of don't really have any other friends here, as opposed to the new school people who hang out all the time.
And remember what happened in her last season and how the entire latter half was her also feeling like an outsider, right? Which was like, hey, I need to find a way in. Let me go to people who also feel on the outs. Hey, Sophie, want to work with me? And so I think that it's an understandable reason why she has that mentality, not only because of the assumption of all these people know each other, they probably have pre-gamed with one another, but also like, this is how I was just living a week and a half ago. Let me kind of pick up from where I left off in that capacity.
Yeah. So Savannah, we know she was very excited to get the chance to work with Rick Devens.
I mean, yeah, she said that Coach was number one, and that was more so for like the reverence of it all. Oh my God, imagine working with Coach. But Rick Devens number two, just because of, again, how much they have in common. And Rick also seemed to be very keen for it, right? You know, he had heard the scant details once the 49 cast was teased about like, oh, here's a former reporter from Georgia. So I think that the two of them are going to be incredibly simpatico, especially because also the two of them are very unconnected on their tribe. So the other idea is Savannah being incredibly upfront about the way she did in the game. And Dalton Ross confirmed this in his cover story, so I can mention it here as well. She did tell her tribe that she won Survivor. I do not know how much she disclosed the method with which she won, but I think she has a good mentality. And granted, maybe her hand was forced because of other voices whispering in people's ears, but it's this idea of like, listen, let me try to present myself as much of a known factor as you can. Because as we're seeing, you know, we'll go through the chart here. Some people are really honestly picking foe for Savannah just because of the assumption of, hey, you're on season 50. You must have done something really good. Jenna Lewis says it best. Like, season 50 is not Gen Pop. It's Death Row. You have to do some serious shit here.
Yeah. And so Savannah also one of the people who was not super high on Cirie.
I think, yeah, I mean, Savannah is somebody who is, as we know, like not afraid to buck up to somebody that she feels threatened by. And I think she very much has this mentality of like, again, as we were talking about before, if you give Cirie an inch, she's going to take an entire acre. And so, I mean, she even said, right, boot her before day one. Like, I do not want to see her on the beach. Bad news to the newscaster, Savannah.
Okay. All right. Mike, anything else you want to say about Savannah before we start to piece this puzzle together?
What do you think about the like emotional strain that Savannah might be going through? Because 10 days is really not a lot of time at all. And like, she was putting in work. She said she was going back to the gym. And again, we have had people play back-to-back seasons. This is the first time we have had a winner immediately come back for the next season.
She did win a 26-day season. And so that, I think that is also, we've never seen somebody do that turnaround from 26 days from 39 days.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even think from like a stamina perspective, more so just like, what could be going through her head as she's like standing on the beach being like, I was literally just here a week and a half ago, and now I'm on a big returnee season. Like, it has to be surreal, to say the least.
Yes. What'd she do? She went home and then came right back?
Yeah. Her and Rizzo were sent home for about a week and change, and then they flew right back again.
I thought Emily had a really astute observation when she said that Savannah and Rizzo were like sitting as far apart from each other as possible. And she's like, and that's exactly what you would do if you didn't want people to think you were close friends.
Yeah, there are a couple of people in my interviews that you'll see they're like, well, maybe they brought them back because they're like bitter rivals and they want to see that happen again, sort of like a Q and a Tiffany. But mostly people were picking up, okay, the two of them are probably in cahoots with one another because they're perhaps doing too much.
That's a good way to catch the traitors, that they feel like that the two people that you see together all the time, it's like, okay, well, that's not the traitors, because they wouldn't just be like out in broad daylight just talking to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the traitors is essentially a game of like Spot, Kyle, and Camilla, right?
Yes. All right. So Mike, how should we do this next? Did you want to give us the friend foes, or do you want to bring up the big board?
All right, let's do the friend foes right now, because we alluded to this a bit in the past, and there have been some calls amongst the fan base as we've gone through this process of, can we have a visual about like who said friend, who said foe, who said something in between, who said lackey in the case of Jenna with Christian, and I've got you covered.
Irrelevant.
Who said irrelevant. So first off, I'm not the only person who does this. There's some fantastic accounts on Twitter, on Reddit that are doing this. So I very much recommend people search those out if you sort of want like a running tally. But I did this with the entire Cila tribe. So here is the visual. So just to explain it a bit, there are two sort of things going on right now. The rows are the people who are talking. So the people we are hearing these opinions from. The columns are the people that we are hearing opinions about. So like the Christian column is everyone's opinions on Christian, everyone's opinions on Cirie, etc., etc. Green check mark means either friend or like I'm leaning friend. The little yellow area either means like I'm in the middle or I'm not sure or I'm mixed on them. And then the X either means I'm leaning foe or straight up foe.
Okay. Anything jump out here to you? I see that there's a lot of red for Cirie, surprisingly, here in this group.
Yes, I was going to say, you put the cart before the horse a little bit when you said, maybe Cirie will never wind up on a group of people who want to get rid of her.
Mm-hmm. Rick, Savannah, Jenna, and Emily all are anti-Ciriers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, to be fair, Emily's rationale for Cirie was very interesting, that she basically felt like Cirie kind of had her head down the entire time in pregame, and so she doesn't even know if she wants to be here. So that could easily change. But Jenna, we know, immediately gunning for Cirie. Savannah, we know, immediately gunning for Cirie. I think Rick's attitude was more so like, she's dangerous, we got to get rid of her. But yeah, there are more knives, I think, at Cirie's throat than any other season she started here with.
Okay. Savannah has 3 red X's and 2 neutral boxes.
Yeah, so Jenna, as we talked about, again, really wants to work with Savannah. Feels like there's something cutthroat about her. Cirie wants to work with Savannah as well. She has a much more fear of Rizzo than Savannah, maybe based on the name alone. Mm-hmm. And then you have people like Emily and Rick. Rick certainly is like, I think Rick is leaning more friend than foe. He said he was mixed because he's like, we have a lot in common, but I also know if you were moderately successful in the world of Atlanta journalism, then like you have a snakiness to you. And I think I think for Emily, like I think Emily would certainly entertain the notion more so than she has with some other people. I mean, if we're looking at the other side of things, the people that have by far the biggest approval rating, number one is Ozzy. Everyone
7 for 7.
Yeah, everyone wants to work for Ozzy, which does make a lot of sense because again, the perception we have of Ozzy, not Oscar, is that he is this kind of two-dimensional player. It's like we talked about with Joe. Like, why wouldn't you want to work with this guy who all he does is win challenges and fish and not win in the end? I think especially like, granted, these are bigger tribes than we've experienced as of late, but they're still fairly small tribes that if you feel like you need those challenge assets, Ozzy, given his previous record, stands out. And then look at Jenna Lewis here.
Yeah, for Jenna Lewis, hey,
the lowest
6,
opinion
7.
on the lowest opinion on her is Emily saying she's irrelevant.
Yeah, I thought maybe not such a great draw for her, but everybody is pretty good except for Emily Flippin, who called her irrelevant.
I think it's that perception. I think it's that idea of what Jenna Lewis represents, where I think people come in and say, well, listen, she's someone from back in the days in Borneo. First, wouldn't it be cool to work with somebody from the very first season? And second, like, Jenna just seems like, she's got this old school mentality. We don't have a lot to fear about her. Again, the big thing is going to be how much is she going to disprove them and at what pace is she going to do so?
All right. And then, Christian, overall, pretty good?
Yeah, Cirie's the only one that outright was saying, like, I don't want to work with him. And even then, it was more so she's like, I can't read him, or he's too smart, essentially, to work with. Jenna, again, compared him to a butt ton of things, but still feels like she could use him as her lackey.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, Joe is interesting because as much as we were talking about, like, how much Joe could easily be brought in as a number, Emily doesn't want to work with him because she assumes that he'll only want to work with the big guys. Ozzy doesn't want to work with him because of the incorrect assumption that he's going to completely change his game. And Rick doesn't want to work with Joe because he wants to win immunities.
Okay.
These are kind of more see-through reasons than other ones we've attributed.
All right. So, Mike, let's keep some of that information in mind. And we're going to do something. We're going to go to the big board here. And so we're going to do our best Kornacki here.
Yes.
And so check this out. So I have here the 8 players here from the Cila tribe, and I'm going to go ahead and put them up. If you're listening to the podcast version, we are going to be looking at a visual representation, and then we can sort of move people around and talk about who's going to be in the middle of things and who might be on the outside looking in. And so, Mike, how should we start this? Should we start with the core of potential best friends, Cirie and Ozzy?
I think that's where we need to start, because I think that is going to be the biggest story perhaps from this tribe, is that on paper, think about what Cirie in particular did to Ozzy and Micronesia, game changers. There was discussion about, okay, he was ready to get some revenge if they went to tribal council early, but this is the match, right? Cirie said, I want to work with Ozzy. I want to take him to the final 3. I hope he feels the same way. And Ozzy feels the same way, and then some. And so I think, guarantee, when they have their first conversation
Why do you
together,
say it like James Carville?
I don't know. The political mindset, perhaps, Rob, when you mentioned Kornacki.
Woo! This alliance, this is going to be a hot alliance.
Exactly. When you go to Winners of War, it's a fire token economy, stupid. But I think that Cirie and Ozzy are going to have that first conversation very early on where they're like, we cool, and then they're going to ride it.
So cool.
From
Okay.
there.
But will this alliance be running things, or are Cirie and Ozzy going to be best friends at the bottom?
All right, well, let's talk about some other groupings here. I really do feel like Christian is going to lock in with Rick. I know as much as Rick is picking up something weird in the preseason, something smells bad, and it's not Christian, I think once they actually talk, it's going to be an easy simpatico relationship. And then I think let's throw Emily in there as well.
Okay. Emily was positive on Rick Devens?
She was not positive on Rick Devens, but she is positive on Christian.
Okay.
I think that Emily has talked about the fact that she specifically wants to work with Christian because he is a known quantity, right? They have built a friendship from playing these games together. Now, look, this is not going to be a locked-in final 2 alliance. I think that they're more likely to turn on each other than not at some point. But I think in these early days, you want to find the people that you have at least some connection to. I think that's why Cirie and Ozzy are going to lock in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see Christian and Emily be like, okay, yeah, let's try to run this initial group at least as long as we can.
Now, is there any sort of an issue here? If you're Emily, do you want to be with people that are sort of like more drawing out that, like, would you rather be, and, you know, would you rather be in the group with the other smart people, one of the other, like, self-proclaimed, like, smart gamer types, or would you rather be seen as the, smart person who is with the more social players?
I don't know. I mean, look at her working with Drew Basile, right? Like, I think she does like to flock to the people who are brainer because that's who she associates with more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think at least, again, in the early days, because also remember the fact of how Emily started her season, particularly from a tribal council perspective. I think she is looking for an in-group immediately. And so I think it would make sense to kind of go with Occam's razor and be like, well, I have this relationship with Christian. I don't care what his, perception of me, I don't care what his character type is or not. I'm going to, for lack of a better term, because I mentioned this a lot with her, glom onto this.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Joe Hunter. Where do you see Joe with all this?
So I think Joe is somebody that a lot of people are going to go to. Like, I think that Joe is a number that a lot of people will try to secure. I'm having trouble figuring out partially because he basically said friend for everybody except one person in this tribe. Like, who will he seek out? Well,
do you have, of the other 3 people, do you have one person that you think is more likely to go with one of these 2 groups?
So first off, I could see Jenna and Joe connecting immediately. Jenna brought this up. They are both from the same area of the country. They are both parents. Joe basically said, Jenna, she's from the first season. I want to work with the old schoolers. They have a mentality that I vibe with. And so I think the 2 of them will try to operate as a duo. And so from that perspective, considering how anti-Cirie Jenna is, she could try to get in with the latter group, especially if she feels like Christian is a lackey.
Okay, so let's just keep them in these voting blocks then for now. And then where do you see Savannah headed with Christian and with Rick?
I think Rick would be the most obvious connection, right? Like, we'll talk about this. I think that Savannah could be someone who's in the most danger if they go early, just because of what people assume about her and the fact she is the least connected out of anybody here. But I would imagine then if she's looking for anybody, I think Rick could be a person. I think Jenna could be a person. If Jenna decides to really immediately approach her with this idea of like, oh my God, I was picking up your vibe at Ponderosa. You're so cool. Work with me. Wouldn't it be fun? Season 1 versus season 49. I actually could see Jenna and Savannah lock in as a duo too.
So it kind of feels like that maybe is this a very bad scenario for Cirie?
This could be a bad scenario.
I guess let's do it a couple different ways. Okay, this is sort of like the bad case scenario for Cirie, where it's like her and
Izzy,
Ozzy,
don't listen to this part.
They know each other. Okay, they're going to be working together. Do we really want to let Cirie get a foothold that she didn't help us win the first challenge? And so we're going to tribal council. We're sorry. This is a respect vote. We hate
Cirie.
to do it. Yeah. Cirie, I'm sorry. This is your 5th time in U.S. Survivor, but, Jenna Lewis is striking again. It's not quite the winners that we're going after, but we're going after the legends.
I think this is if Janana, which is my shipping name for Jenna and Savannah, if they get their way. If like breeds like, and the two of them are like, oh my God, we need to get rid of Cirie post haste. If they are able to successfully put the motions together and get enough people around them, this would be, I think, the scenario where Cirie does go home early, is if those two in particular are able to whip enough votes together.
Okay. All right. So that's one version of how this all could go down. But let's paint a more charitable scenario for Cirie where
great teeth on that charitable scenario.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and so give me the people who want to work with Cirie and let's bring them all into the fold.
So let's take a look here. So Christian wants to work with Cirie.
Okay. So, and we know that Ozzy wanted to work with Christian.
Yes. So I think that Christian is someone that could be brought over there.
But Cirie did not really love Christian.
That's okay, because I think with Christian comes Emily.
Yes, Cirie, and Christian is about to profess his undying love to Cirie.
Yes, Christian's going to make his day one pitch of like, use me. I'll make up this 3 right now. I'll be the, the third point of the love triangle, the menage a trois. So, but I think if Emily is with Christian...
Doesn't have to be like that.
I think if Emily is with Christian, that's great appeal, right? Because as much as like Ozzy's making a lot of assumptions about Emily, like, oh, I think we could connect on a lot of stuff, but I don't think she'll like me. I think that could easily come out in the wash once they actually start talking. And we know Cirie wants to work with Emily.
Yeah, she wants to brush her hair.
Yeah, so I think that things will untangle once they end up working out on the island here. So this could be a foursome. And then maybe they bring in like Joe, potentially.
Okay.
Joe is someone who was definitely amiable.
She's gonna like Cirie's gonna like Joe.
Joe wanted to work with Cirie. Joe called her Mama Bear.
Okay. So is this the Rick Devens worst case scenario?
This could be either the Rick Devens. Honestly, it could be worst case scenario for any one of these 3. I think there's a reason to get rid of anybody here. If Jenna is going too hard too fast, this could be a place where they get her out. If they feel like Rick's preseason perceptions of him perhaps putting it on too much are too inauthentic and they don't want to give him any runway, that could be a reason to get rid of him. Or it could be last one in, first one out. Hey, Savannah, we don't know a lot about you, so let's keep all the known factors in. You're out of here.
Savannah may want Cirie out, but Jenna Lewis is more likely to say that out loud.
I would agree with that. I think Savannah is going to sit back entirely as long as she can. Because I think as much as, again, the mystery of what she might be is greater than what she actually brought to Survivor 49, even though, again, I think she had a very impressive performance in Survivor 49. I think she would much rather, in true New Era style, sit as far back as possible and let these big people gun for each other and not have anything directed at her.
To me, I feel like that this second scenario seems more likely that one of these people could be in trouble, where I just don't feel like that there's going to be enough momentum for people to take out Cirie early in this game.
Yeah, I think that the first scenario would be most likely in like the first 2 episodes. If it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we're going to tribal council, let's make this happen now. But again, we talk about this all the time. Like, once Cirie has enough time, she can spin that straw into gold. And so if they're not going to tribal until like episode 3, 4, then I think this could be a structure that's more set in stone.
I'd have to compare to the other tribes, but do you think that low key could this be a really good challenge team with, Christian and Emily are on the puzzle.
Mhm.
Then you've got Ozzy and Joe and Jenna Lewis are certainly no slouches. Savannah has won 4 immunities. Rick Devens could be doing some sort of carnival games.
I mean, yeah, the thing about Rick is that surprisingly, Rick has never won a tribal challenge because he lost every single time, and then he was voted out. So he might be the cursed one here, but otherwise, yeah, I think that if you talk about like their individual strengths, they are great. And so, yeah, I think that people are looking at this group, especially compared to the next one we'll talk to in the Purple Tribe, Vatu, as like, this could be a group. Cirie could repeat history here and not go to tribal council early on. And Emily could buck history as well, I guess.
Yeah,
By
I mean, they don't have
comparison.
Jonathan, but I do feel like that, that on paper, it's like, I don't know, like some of these people, are these the challenge beasts? But when we look,
They're the most well balanced tribe, I would
it's
say,
a
out of the
well
three.
balanced team, and so maybe they could find a way, especially when it comes down to they have the puzzle people, I think.
Yeah, and like that was something that we saw as recent as the Cila Tribe, right, in Survivor 49, of like they had strength out the wazoo, but then you see them get to a puzzle and they completely fall apart. When you have those clutch performers, that's something that can really keep you in the hunt and avoid you having to go to tribal.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, anything else to say here with this tribe?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. We comb through everything right now, much like Cirie wants to do with Emily's hair. I think there's a lot of interesting relationships that I think could immediately manifest on the island. I really do think that the main storyline of this group, as long as this is a tribe, is going to be Cirie and Ozzy.
Yeah.
I think if Cirie avoids becoming the target early on, I think this is the duo that controls everything within this group.
Makes sense. All right. Can't wait to see it. February 25th, 3-hour Survivor premiere. Mike Bloom is rolling out more and more interviews every single day. We will be back to talk about the next tribe. Mike, can you just give us real quick, who are we talking about in the next tribe?
Right. So again, we're going to be sticking to our formula of 2 interviews a day. We are moving on to the aforementioned Vatu tribe, Purple Tribe, Pink Tribe, whatever you want to call them. So tomorrow is going to be my interviews with Angelina and Aubrey.
Ooh.
Next day is going to be Colby and Genevieve. The day after is going to be Kyle and Q. And then we close things out with Rizzo and Stephanie. And then in 5 days' time, Rob, you and I will be back together breaking down that tribe and trying to figure out where the dynamics set in that. So feel free to check out in that order. I'm releasing things in a different order on Parade. So if, for example, you already want a sneak peek as to Colby's interview, Stephanie's interview, Aubrey's interview, be sure to check that out as well.
Okay. We mentioned it earlier in the podcast, of course, that all these folks are mentioned here in the book that I've been working on, The Tribe and I Have Spoken, which you could pre-order at robhasabook.com, going through all of Survivor's greatest moments and most notable heroes and villains. And we did speak about every single person that's going to be in this season in some way or another. They're all mentioned here. The Tribe and I Have Spoken, available everywhere on May 5th, but you can pre-order between now and then. And we are working on some very exciting surprises for anybody who pre-orders the book, The Tribe and I Have Spoken, at robhasabook.com.
Do you think Cirie can give nicknames to anybody if they end up pre-ordering?
She's done all my nicknames for everybody.
I like that. Actually, that could work really well. I mean, I think we'll talk about this a couple times from now. Maybe the coach honorifics would be like the more, on brand meme. But I'm trying to think about something we could get out of this group. Rick Devens could do a breaking news announcement around any sort of life events for you. You could have Christian do some sort of whiteboard around any problem you need to solve in your life.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah. So Yeah, I'm trying to look. I'm looking at the Cirie chapter. Did we talk about
You could if you pre-order, Emily will just read you for filth, or Jenna Lewis, pick your poison.
Mm-hmm. So there we go. Yeah, in the hands of the fans. Okay. Oh, did we even have that in her 5 seasons?
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Mike, anything else coming up for you?
No, just working the Survivor beat. So be sure to check that out. Again, I have immense gratitude for everyone who has checked everything out. I know it has been a lot, including all the stuff us in the Survivor Press Corps are doing, whether it's with Sharon Tharp, Dalton Ross, or whether it's with, Terry Taronis at THR, Nick Caruso for People, Kelly Boyle for TV Insider, Steph Pettit for People, Mara Reinstein for Us Weekly. Check out all of our content. This is a really great group that is putting out so much great stuff every single day from these players. So I know it's been a while since we've been able to talk about these preseason interviews, and so we really turned on the faucet here. So check it out. Let us know you've checked it out as well. And again, very, very thankful for people who have been watching these videos, listening to the podcast, reading my articles, because I had an incredible time getting to speak with this cast. So if even that comes across like 1% of the actual feelings, I'm happy.
You've done such a great job, Mike. We hear your joy, even like when I'm out not watching the video. Actually, we don't even see you in the video. So yeah, we only hear your joy in the video. So
fortunately, you don't have to see me in the video. Though
yes.
I don't know what my face would have looked like when I did that gasp about Christian's child.
I imagined it in my head. It was very impressive. So, all right. Thank you all so much for checking this out. Keep up the good work, Mike. And check out everything else we have going on here on RHAP, including all of our coverage of the Traders. Also, check out, I talked about the Traders UK Season 4 in full with Puya and Annabelle. That podcast was very fun, and that is out as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.